Good afternoon, my name is Dustin Corus, and today's speech will be on the troop withdrawal. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq to disarm Iraq of weapons of mass destruction. Although this was the state objective of the invasion, many Americans believe that this was not the true intention of President Bush and the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Rather, they believe this was an excuse for the United States to use Iraq as a fighting ground to hunt terrorists, particularly Al-Qaeda. Whatever the real reason for the invasion, the simple truth is that our military is in Iraq. For quite some time now, Democrats have been trying to persuade President Bush to withdraw these troops. They believe that the Iraq war is lost and that the troop surge is not effective. However, what the Democrats and many Americans fail to understand is that the United States has an obligation to the people of Iraq and the United States to see this war through the end. It would be in the best interest of the United States to remain in Iraq because troop withdrawal would violate major theater war phases, would impede our developing foreign relations with Iraq, and will give Al-Qaeda a psychological advantage for future terrorist operations. First, the United States military should remain in Iraq in order to complete all major theater war phases, thereby ensuring a successful outcome of this war. A major theater war is a recently developed military term to define a war in which a large portion of the United States armed forces are involved in a multi-phase attack against the enemy. Operation Iraqi Freedom is the first war to fall into this category, since this classification was created during the Clinton administration. It is based on the principle that a successful campaign requires the orchestration of many missions without many different forces, coordinated to have a strong combined effect in unraveling and defeating the enemy. In order to be successful, the operation must be comprised of 4 phases, some of which may overlap. Phase 1 is halting the invasion. Simply put, this means that in order for the United States to keep its credibility, it must defeat all enemy advances and objectives. It is absolutely critical that the United States be able to seize all enemy activity within the initial invasion so that less territory has to be regained by coalition forces. Failure to do so may result in conflicts elsewhere. Phase 2 is force buildup, which is the ability to place supportable forces in locations where presence is needed. This is necessary for restoring infrastructure as well as engaging hostile enemy forces if need be. Phase 3 is counteroffensive. This is the point where U.S. commanders determine if combat-ready forces are equipped and ready for military operations throughout the theater. The last phase, Phase 4, is ensuring post-war stability. The goal of combat operations is not simply to bring an end to a war, but also to establish peace. In order to do this, some forces must remain in the areas of conflict. These phases of war were put into place for a reason. Every successful war that the United States has been a part of has followed these phases. Furthermore, these practices have been successfully used for centuries. As stated in Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which dates back to the early 6th century, military forces should be swift as the wind, quiet as a forest, conquer like the fire, steady as a mountain. Sun Tzu's teachings and philosophies are still taught today at top military academies throughout the world. Because of his profound wisdom, many top generals, including General Petraeus, are putting his teachings into practice by following the major theater war phases in present-day wars such as the Iraq War. To determine whether the 4 major theater war phases have been completed, the following questions need to be answered. Has the enemy been defeated? This includes not only Al-Qaeda but also the Mahdi army and Muqtada al-Sadr's rebel militia. Furthermore, can the current state of Iraq be considered stable? The answer to all these questions is no. Therefore, Phase 3 and Phase 4 have not been completed, and the United States Armed Forces should remain in Iraq until they are. A second reason for halting troop withdrawal from Iraq is to preserve the foreign relations we are developing with Iraq. For decades, foreign relations have been the heart and soul of the United States. Retired Army Colonel W. Patrick Lang summed up the United States foreign policy best when he said, "To be blunt, our foreign policy tends to be predicated on the notion that everyone wants to be an American." The United States believes that all non-democratic nations would be better served by adopting our form of government. Prior to the Iraq War, many Americans agreed that the Iraqis would be better off abandoning their old traditions and lifestyles and modeling themselves as the United States. They believed that the United States should be the sharp swords of modernization in the Middle East. Based on this view of foreign policy, the country of Iraq is not ready for the United States to leave until they are able to sustain a democracy. They have been given countless opportunities to prove to General Petraeus that their government is able to run its own country. In the past year, the government has shown vast improvements, and the military has been able to meet the United States' rigorous demands in terms of being prepared to take over military operations on their own. However, despite these improvements, the Iraqi government has not been able to meet all the requirements set forth by General Petraeus, such as to be able to run a military operations without the help of the U.S. military forces. In conclusion, it would be in the best interest of the United States to remain in Iraq, because troop withdrawal would violate major theater war phases, would impede our developing foreign relations with Iraq. It will give al-Qaeda a psychological advantage for future terrorist operations. And in order to successfully win a war, all 4 phases of the war must be completed prior to troop withdrawal. This is not the case in Iraq, where the military is currently transitioning between phases 3 and 4. In addition, withdrawing troops would hinder the United States' foreign relations not only with Iraq, but with the rest of the world, who would look negatively upon destroying a country without rebuilding it. Finally, if troops were removed, it would only strengthen al-Qaeda's stronghold in Iraq and encourage future terrorist attacks against all nations. In times such as these, it is best to think in the most logical way possible. It's not a question of whether or not troops will be withdrawn from Iraq, but rather, when is the right time to do so? At this point in time, troop withdrawal would be detrimental to both the United States and Iraq. Therefore, the United States military should continue its present occupation of Iraq until terrorist factions have been defeated and the country of Iraq is stable. The end.